Hello, my name is Maddie McMurray, and my paper was about plus size queer individuals. And I started out with a question: how does the representation of queer plus size bodies influence how those individuals perceive themselves? I started out with this thesis: the representation of plus size queer individuals in media both challenges and reinforces negative stereotypes. This significantly influences the societal perception of body diversity and queer identities by highlighting the complex idea of intersectionality, while also risking the perpetuation of negative tropes that often compromise authentic representation. Very first and foremost, I decided it would be a great idea to look at the intersection of being plus size and queer. People who embody both of these identities often experience a unique form of exclusion in mainstream culture. This includes a lack of representation and visibility in media, fashion, and activism, meaning they don't really see people that look like them in the mainstream media. It's characterized by society, as Harap and Qatari state, that those who exist outside of societal norms, which includes being queer and plus size, as undesirable. Um, this part of their identity is often seen as issues or conditions that need to be fixed rather than identities to affirm and find a community with, which this is also seen all the times in media by way of that people don't really see these types of bodies, and that experience can also complicate the body image of these people and the way they view themselves and their gender expression, as societal ideas of beauty and gender may feel unattainable or conflicting for them. And we can see this here by a couple people. First and foremost, Taylor did some work that found that fat femmes feel that their fatness often renders them unfeminine and people view them as unfeminine or even has a masculinizing effect for them. Based on a paper that White did, and some insight from transgender individuals, the way that people viewed their bodies depended on whether or not they were perceived as plus size. The way their gender was perceived was determined whether the people saw them as plus size. And this person states, whether I'm fat depends on whether the person or people looking at me believes me to be a man or a woman. They go on to explain that when they are perceived as a man, I'm a big dude, but not outside the norm for such things. When they are perceived as a woman, they are considered revolting and not only unmanishly, unattractively mannish, but also grossly fat. Based on the paper I read from Woodsall, it's also for in the gay community, the body aesthetic for many gay males is much is a much more muscular body type, lean top, muscular upper bodies, and that standard is often rewarded within gay culture, and those types of bodies are more favorable in clubs and commercial representation. There, with this view of representation or the lack of it, comes up with the consequences of microaggressions. And these microaggressions, whether they're committed consciously or unconsciously, are perpetuated based on fat stigma and weight-based discrimination. These are often unrecognized when we're talking about media, and they're rarely discussed or brought up in discussion. And in terms of these microaggressions that usually target fatness, when consumers see bigger models or bigger characters on TV, especially if they're queer and plus size. Um, and this can include backhanded compliments, which complimenting a fat person on a small frame or tiny face, weight loss encouragement without them knowing what's going on with that person. They blindly celebrate their weight loss as success, even if it could be in an unhealthy manner. And there's health concerns um, that are trolling, which is like has comments like, I am worried about your health. And this in turn can be seen when plus size models are presented in magazines. Like the thing that people view most of those people's bodies is that they're in a poor health condition, that they don't have good health or good health regimen without knowing anything about this person. It's just what they perceive based on how they look. The thin ideal that is communicated by advertising and other media has also been associated with disordered eating habits. So when people perceive them when they are bigger as being unhealthy, or that they shouldn't even be in an online space because of the way their body looks, because them being thin would be considered more ideal. They have these negative effects, which includes these disordered eating habits and low self esteem and overall more stigmatized attitudes towards women and others who do not conform to this ideal. This is perpetuated by magazines, as any amount of fat in magazines is viewed as a problem. The weight related shame from hearing these comments and seeing this lack of representation for bigger people in media can cause shame from the societal stigma, and it's often internalized and derives negative outcomes such as social withdrawal, where individuals avoid situations where their bodies could be exposed or they could partake in unhealthy behaviors like extreme dieting, over exercising, or purging their bodies in an attempt to fix themselves, which is also when people see this type of behavior from people who are in mainstream that are plus size, they reward it and it encourages their behavior. Due to all these factoids, there is an importance for plus size queer activists who are in the online space to create space so that there are more people in that area that see them and they're like, oh, there's people like me here. For in the way that this happens mainly is for plus size individuals, they blog about fashion most of the time, which can be seen as an empowering experience that enables construction of positive identity, as Lamentius states. Many times, these plus size influencers use their bodies and their online platform to empower themselves by reclaiming the word fat and by referring to themselves as fat, because fat is usually seen as a dirty word when it is in fact not. And the use of this word has provided them in separate ways ownership of their identities. And if people see these stories, and in turn, by telling and retelling the intimate stories pertaining to people and their fatness, as well as their queerness, it can that are often usually hidden, we can begin to hopefully disrupt and shift fatphobic and homophobic structures within society that blur lines between who a person is and who society deems they should be, which can hopefully create more representation in media in general. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.